Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. It is definitely a day of the mysteries unveiled for us, right? And the mystery of the greatest of all mysteries is who we are and what we are and what we're all about. Hallelujah. If you say I am, you look at it in the Hebrew code. If you do that and you say I am, you say I, that's the infinite, that's the all, that's the non-existence, that's the timeless, that's the on and on and on, power, essence, glory. That's the I. Am has the mem. Pay attention to that in Hebrew. Anytime you hear that mem, in any word or any compilation of the Hebrew glyphs and codes, you always remember that's material. That's me. So when you say I am, that means God and you are married and are one. That's what that phrase means. That's what the burning bush was about. That was what Moshe, that's water, and fire, that's what water and fire was about. It was about the merging of the divine essence, the timeless, in time. So, and you're going to see that just over and over and over. Therefore, you cannot do away with the exoteric or outward. It is a beautiful reflection, but you must focus on the inward. That's where you find it. That's the depth. That's the truth. And that's inside. You can't find it looking outside you. You can't find it going to what you and I have been taught to, a heaven out yonder somewhere. That heaven is here. It's right inside me. It's right inside you. So, yes, please.
When you're looking in a mirror, you don't focus on it's a beautiful frame and it's a nice big mirror. You're focusing on the image that you're seeing in the mirror.
Yes. In which you speak out when you say, I am. I am joy. I am life. I am who I am. Yes. And it helps you to see who you are.
Yes, it's timelessness in time. That is a conundrum. Yeah, and truth is that way. Truth is built on paradox. It's not either or. That has been the great confusion, trying to make it either or. You can't do that. Truth is a conundrum. It's paradoxical. It's both and. Always both and. So grab that, remember that, and put that in your pipe, smoke that, and it really minister to you. You're going to places. You're going to places. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and recap a few things, just a few things. Barashit bara Elohim et ha shamayim et. By the way, that Hebrew et, let me show you what that glyph is quickly. It's used in Hebrew occasionally, not a lot, but it's this is the glyph et. That's the Hebrew glyph et. Aleph, number 1, and Tov, number 400. It's never ever a word. It's always a symbol. It's always a sign. We have a phrase in the English language that goes like this: I'm going to show you the whole ball of wax. You ever heard that phrase?
Yes.
I'm going to show you the whole thing. That's exactly what that phrase, see, that's the beginning and that's the end, or that's the last. These are the basic 22 glyphs of the Hebrew alphabet, 1 through 400. They have 5 finals added to it to give it the 900, okay? To give it the completion of both the inward spirit and the outward physical sensual. So it's a combination of all. So when you hear that glyph, et, at, anytime you hear that, and then the next glyph or compilation of words that's behind it, then what it's saying is, I'm going to show you the whole ball of wax about this. When you say et ha shamayim, you say, I'm going to show you the whole ball of wax about shamayim. Et ha eretz, I'm going to show you the whole ball of wax about eretz. That's how that Genesis 1 opens up and introduces us to the Torah. First 5 books of the Bible. The Torah is about that phrase. That's the foundational principal truth. You can never lay that down in the foundation of your being, and when you go over there and you're reading about these phenomenal stories, which they are, you got to remember these stories are elaborating, they are exaggerating, they are amplifying et ha-shamayim. They are exaggerating, amplifying et ha-eretz. Okay, heaven and earth, not out there, but here, me, you, we, I. It's you. It's about me and you. It's about I am. So here's how that sounds. Barashit bara Elohim et ha shamayim va et ha eretz. And this is a kind of a transliteration that was Madame Blavatsky drew from this. This is several hundred years old of the Hebrew glyphs, not as a language, but this is what it says. Out of the ever-existing essence. I can chew on that all day.
Oh, yeah.
That is called, let me tell you how that's explained in Genesis 1. It's that out of the ever-living essence is used by the word said. That doesn't mean that God has vocal cords and speaks, because God don't. God's not a man. The only vocal cords God's got are yours.
That's right.
So you're blessing or cursing yourself with those instruments. Okay? The word said simply means emanate, to come out from. So what's coming out from is coming out from the space. We've been taught to call heaven space. But heaven is you. And yes, there is space inside you. There is, and they know that. That's what, again, another conundrum. Out of the ever-existing essence, the divine. Or, another way of saying it, here it says, another way of saying that same thing is out of the womb. Because you see, these phrases are not patriarchy, they are matriarchy. Patriarchy was introduced to us through religion. So when spiritual truths begin to be encapsulated in religion, in other words, put in bondage or to bind you up, that's what religion means. You can look up the word religion from the Latin. It actually means to tie up or to bind up. And so the Catholic Church, what they did to us, they throwed us a little sneaky curve. They said, well, really what we're trying to say is we want to bind you up and tie you up with God. That's not what they wanted to do. They wanted to bind you up and tie you up with the creed that they gave you, and the creed they gave you was a system of beliefs that they wanted to put you in. So when you embrace that system of beliefs, now you're in that box. They're not.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you get in that box, it's sometimes difficult to get out of that box. I mean, you'll find it's hard to shake yourself from this. Well, I believe, I've said this time and time again over the years, I love to engage conversation with people, especially some thinkers, people who think. It's not a lot of fun to engage with people who are just bound up in religious beliefs and they're angry, and by God, they're going to show you. You ever had that? I have. I've had them. They get. Well, I don't. What you say the Bible says.
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you what we believe.
Right.
And they'll tell you real
If you
quick.
get tied up in that, what they're doing is removing you from the kingdom.
And all they're doing is taking your freedom. You don't have to go there. You don't have to engage it. Okay. Out of the womb. The womb of the morning. The womb of the essence, the womb of the everlasting, the womb of the matriarchal mother, the mother that we all came from, not the mother of your physical flesh, but the mother of your divine essence. You were birthed out of the mother of your divine essence. Out of the womb. And listen to them. Also the head. See, I can hear so much in that. if you ever have seen a woman birthing, your wife or whatever, birthing a child, and that head begins to crown. Wow, it's a glorious moment. It's a glorious time. That's what this is talking about. When I say bodily sheep, that's what I see. I see this, all of this beauty of the giving of birth, the bringing forth of God in essence as human. That's crazy awesome. Out of the womb, also the head thereof. Now listen to this. When you see the head, you just see this one beautiful thing crowned, but covered up inside it is duality. Covered up inside it is contrast. Covered up inside that head is a right brain, a left brain, a male, a female, an Adam, an Eve, a Sarah, an Abraham. You can go all through scriptures, and when you see these names, you see these name changes. Stop, pay attention. There's something phenomenal God's trying to say to you. Anytime God changes an Abram to an Abraham, or He changes a Jacob to an Israel, or any place where you see that going on, pay attention to it, because God's saying something profound to us if we open our eyes and open our ears. The head crown, the dual, parentheses, the androgynous. See, that's who the essence is. It's androgynous. It's male and female. It's electricity and magnetism. It's both and, not one or the other. You don't divide it. It's both male and female. The androgynous. The power, parentheses, God's, S, shaped the double heaven, the upper and the lower heaven, being generally explained as heaven and earth. The latter word means esoterically the vehicle. Can y'all get this?
Yes,
This is so good. The vehicle, as it gives the idea of, and my addition to this is the physical body.
Yes.
And that's you. That becomes you. And so I wanted to read you that. That's what we started out with. That's out of the Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky, and the things that she said. And I put some of a little change up here on the board to my stick man. I did my stick man. If you look at my stick man, I colored him up just a little bit. I did the top half. That's 3.5. When you look at the book of Revelation, let me point this out to you. In the book of Revelation, you'll never find the number 7. Other than the 7 churches in in Revelations 2 and 3. That's all you'll find about 7. You won't find the 7-year tribulation simply because it does not exist. It's just plain not there. You really won't even find it anywhere in Scripture other than the book of Daniel, and you'll find Daniel's 70th week. And that week has to do with 7 days, which has to do with the stick man or the 7 yawns. So the book of Daniel is actually also an esoteric writing about this phenomenal character that's mentioned in Genesis 1 and 2, the 7 days. And it's also about this phenomenal drawing. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how these things merge and marry. So why I did this, and I put the top half blue. I put the top half to represent heaven, even though that heaven, Shin Mem is this, Yod Mem is this. But I did these in color because colors speak. The colors say the same thing. The sounds say the same thing. The numbers say the same thing. See, that's what the Pythagorean school is all about, to show you the symmetry, to show you the harmony, to show you how that everything is blended and merged together. Nature constantly speaks that to us, and we just have to learn to tune into it, open our eyes and ears. The green, I use the green because right here in March, April, May, we begin to see everything on the earth get greener. Don't we?
Right.
See, and then up here in June, July, August, September, we begin to see the blue, the heavens, the sun opens up, the brightness, the blueness. And so these colors are there so that they can speak to us and see that this character, which is you have a merging of your physical, you have a merging of the divine, all of that in you as one being. And here's what happens to it. It is It's all hung on the cardinal cross. Cardinal cross being the oldest symbol in nature. The cardinal cross is always referring to the man, the Adam Kidmon. That's a Kabbalistic term. Adam Kidmon is called the man in the sky. The man in the sky created the man, the human, on the earth.
Right.
It did. That's called the gods. This one up here is called the gods, the Elohims. These are the Elohims. These amalgamation, this configuration of energies, this powers, these abilities, these potentialities. They're always there, and they're always constantly emanating, coming forth. They're coming forth for you and coming forth for me, doing all of the things that we all desire to do, to be, and to become. So let me, I want to, everybody write that down so you can write your check out, Beth Hannah. Okay? Word, I'll go ahead and put it on here. Sheen. A lot of times this mem, this one gets tricky. This one has 40 value. Yud or Yud. This mem usually always gets confused. Most people get confusion of the two because of the similarity. This is mem 40. This is final mem 600. This mem 40 always deals with physical creation. This mem 600, 6 being the number of man with the dual 0, 0 added to it. This has to do with more of a divine essence. So this mem is the essence of the divine. So when I have the Yod, this is the androgynous divine one. Okay? And this is heaven. So this part right here is the Am. This part right here is the I. So this is the I Am. Just one word. Put it together. But two, androgynous. So it's the two, the dual. The two that's combined to become one. Okay? So if you think with that with me, shalom, that's what starts this Hebrew glyph sheen. Shalom. Now, shalom actually means peace, but it doesn't mean peace like we have been trained to think of peace. It means peace that comes out of freedom. We think peace comes out of more guns, more power, more bombs, more weapons, more. We're stronger than them. We can intimidate them. Therefore, we keep our peace. That's not what shalom means. It doesn't mean I've got peace because I got my foot on the neck of my enemy. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean that I've got peace because I've got more power than my enemy. It has nothing to do with that. It means I have peace because I'm free. My freedom is the assurance of my peace. My peace is the assurance of my freedom. We need to get that right. I even hear the nation of Israel. They have one of the most profound military groups in the world, and they combine, and everybody says, "Oh, you better not mess with Israel. You better not mess with their military forces, because they got God behind them." Bull! That's a whole misunderstanding of what they're just doing the same thing we're doing. They're merged together in religion, just exactly like everybody else is. When they say, "Oh, America's blessed because we back up Israel, we pray for Israel, we stand for the hope of Israel." Bull! That's the whole gross misunderstanding. You are Israel, and they got you in more bondage than you can imagine. You don't even own your house, and you think you do. They still do. They own it. They own your house. They own your car. They own your bank account. And let me tell you, they can get into it anytime they want to. And they tell you and me certain things, think that you are protecting your peace. No, they're not. They're binding you up. If they gave you peace, you don't have to pay like taxes that you got to pay.
And Israel's not Israel.
No, it's not the Israel of God.
No.
No, it's not the Israel of the Scripture. I can say it that way. Or of the true understanding of the Scripture. So shalom, peace. I know people hear these CDs, they hear these DVDs, and Kirby puts them things out there and gets me and him both in all kinds of trouble and da 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 da. You know, why did he say it? He puts a swastika on the board. You know, no, I'm using ancient glyphs to tell you the beauty of the story that God's always wanted you and me to know and to hear. And as we begin to embrace this beauty and this liberty and this peace and this freedom to be, we begin to get free. We begin to be who we are. And then the mem, this glyph right here, number 44. And here's what you're going to see with the cardinal cross. What the cardinal cross did is the cardinal cross divided the sky, the space, into 4 categories. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 categories makes a part of the base of all esoteric, all foundational ancient wisdom truths, no matter if you were in China or you were in Hawaii or you were in Egypt or you were in North America as one of the Indian tribes. Didn't matter where you were, and didn't matter what name you called the Great Spirit, the Father, whatever you called it, Allah. I mean, that's a true pronunciation from the Hebrew Aleph. The thing about the Aleph, God can be Elohim, Allah, as well as Elohim. Right. You get offended because somebody calls God Allah? That's ridiculous. God's called Allah all through the Hebrew Bible. Mm-hmm. I can show it to you everywhere through the Hebrew Scriptures. The Aleph can also be said the Elif. So see, you have different ways. The Beth can be said the Veth. It can be a Vat, V-A-T, as well as it can be a Bat, B-A-T. It's just the way you have to understand it. And again, it goes back, and I'm not going to get into the vowel points simply because you'll lose the value of the glyphs. But they have to do with how you take the glyphs, and they come through the vocal area of the wind, the breath. The Spirit gives life to it. It's giving life to these special designs, these divine designs. And these divine designs are deposited inside every one of you. Every one of you have it. What's happened to you and me, what's happened to us, is we were born here in pain. Your mother it was painful for her to get you here. Yeah. That's why they call it birth pains. It's painful for her to push you out. You were born in pain, folks. Pain is what's been translated as sin. It's not what we call it. I want to just get so mad and cuss sometimes because what they've done with sin makes, well, you're just an old sinner, da 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 da. No, you're someone who has pain and you have lost your ability to function in the divine realm because of the hurts, because of the things that happened to you in childbirthing, in the early years of child raising. It's not your mom and daddy's fault. They may have been dysfunctional. They may have been addicts. They may have been drunks. They may have been angry. They may have been all of those things. They didn't know what they were doing. Fall in love with them and forgive them. Free yourself by doing that. Yes. My mother and daddy weren't perfect. My God, there's nobody that's got a mother and daddy perfect. But they brought me in here and I'm perfect. They sure as hell didn't know that. They thought, oh, we don't know what to do with this boy. I'm the black sheep of the family. You know, they don't know what to do with me. I'm 16-year-old. Got my driver's license. I'm a man. I have a ride. I have a mechanical mind. And so at 16-year-old, I go and I get me a job. I had a job since I was 12. Back then, you didn't have to be a certain age to work. So I went to work when I was 12, public work. Made a quarter an hour. 25 cents an hour. That's how much I made. No, I'm sorry. I made 10 cents an hour when I first went because it's part-time. I went full-time, got a raise, quarter an hour. So I was making big money. I bought me an old car. I took that old car. I'm 16-year-old. I took that old car. I took the motor out of it because it wasn't big enough. I went to a junkyard and I got a motor out of a wrecked Corvette. Back then, in the early 60s, Corvettes would come out with what they call a 327 engine. You get it with different calibers of horsepower. I took that 327 out, me and my cousin, who was several years older than me, we took that 327 and we tore it down and we built it from the bottom up, from the inside out. We built the thing to where it was pulling somewhere around 600 horsepower.
Wow.
Now, back in the early 60s, between 60 and 65, if you had a vehicle pulling 600 horsepower, even if it's a small block, you had something that had a lot of power. I had a 55 Chevrolet that had a lot of power. It's known as one of the fastest cars in North Georgia. It kept me in jail. I don't know why. It was a beautiful car. I fixed it up. It was nice and all this kind of thing. And it was fast. I run whiskey in that car because the law couldn't catch me. Back then, you didn't have to worry about the things you got because the best they had was a CB radio. And they didn't even all have a CB radio back then. So if you were faster than them, you could outrun them. It wasn't no big deal. It wasn't no problem. I could outrun them. Well, that kept me in trouble. You think that my mama, you think that she thought, well, he's just wild and rebellious? No, she thought I'm going to split hell wide open. And that was her training. My mama and my grandma probably stayed on their knees praying for me all the time because they could hear me coming and they could hear me leaving for 5 miles. It didn't even have mufflers on it. I used this car to run on the drag strip. I was constantly outrunning the law for racing in town. So, you know, there's hope for all. There's hope for all. You know? We can all make it. We can all get into the. I'm saying this to say, I didn't have a perfect upbringing.
Yeah.
I had good parents, as good as they knew how to be. I had to work through my shit.
All right.
I had to. And some of it I still have to deal with. Some of it still crops up. You have to do that with yourself.
Yeah.
You have this divine appointment to deal with you. It doesn't matter that you were beat, you were abused, you were abandoned. Look at Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer, his father was a drunk, an alcoholic, beat him and kicked him and left him when he was a baby. When Wayne Dyer was 36 years old, he hated his father so bad he couldn't hardly get on with life. Heavy drinker. He actually went in the South to try to find his father and found where his father, he didn't even know he was dead. He didn't have any idea his father was dead. Found his father's grave. He went to find his father with the intent to cuss his father out, to spit on him, to beat him up, or to tell him all of the horror that he had put and deposited in his. And you know what he did? He found his father's grave. And when he was at his father's grave, he had an epiphany. And he wound up kneeling and crying and forgiving his father. That turned his life around.
Yeah.
What am I saying? I'm saying you're born here in pain. Got translated for sin from 2 different words. The Hebrew word chata and the Greek word harmatia. Got called sin, got named sin when it should have been tagged as pain, because none of us live life without pain. All of you are sitting here, and in many ways that pain affects you in many different ways. Sometimes I can see it, I could name it, I could call it right out, but what it do make you fat mad. And there's no sense in that. I couldn't do any good for you then, because now you're totally on the defense. You got to learn to look in this mirror of I am and find the God of you.
Yes.
We have got to do that. We have got to reclaim, and we have got to capture, as it was, ourself, our divine self. Got to look back into the mirror of God and find me, find the I am. And doing that, you will find your healing. You'll find your deliverance. You'll find your purpose. You'll find the plan. And let it begin to unfold in your life. Hallelujah. And it will, and it's designed to do that. It's supposed to do that. Okay, y'all got me way off my notes. It's not my fault. From the time that you were formed in your mother's womb, we have a phenomenal teacher. This is just something I wrote about probably a couple of months ago. From the time that we are being formed in our mother's womb, we have a phenomenal teacher that is constantly teaching us from our environment. Selah. That means pause, take a moment, think about that. That teacher is constantly teaching you from your environment. So if you are in the womb of your mother and daddy, and all your mother and daddy knows is strife and anger and stress and cussing, that's your environment. You're in the womb, that's what you're drawing. That's what you're getting. You're drawing that. You're learning that as an infant in the womb. Then you're born. And you're born into that situation. And all they do is fight, fuss, cuss, etc. Or maybe they don't do that. Maybe you're in an environment that's beautiful and blissful. Anyway, either way, you're learning from that. You're drawing from that. That environment is your teacher. Children don't learn because they go to school at the age of 6 and 7 and start to say, teachers say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Children start learning while they're in the womb. And when they're a few months old, they begin to pick up. They're looking around. They are learning hundreds of things at the same time. Just them little eyes just looking around and they're just drawing it in. They're magnets. They're pulling it in. You and I did that. These are foundational things that happen to us. Learning from our environment. Learning from the conditions of the water, the air, and all of the natural surroundings that are our influence and that are affecting our physiological. They are affecting our psychological. They are affecting our neurological. I hope you hear that. They are affecting you at the core, at the root of your being. They are building you to be who you are. This teacher is drawing from all of your surroundings and downloading into your memory bank or into your hard drive how it is reading your environment at that moment from the events going on around you in those moments. The part of you that is being educated and trained is your sensual apparatus. That's what's being trained, is your sensual apparatus. What I'm saying, I'm not saying this negatively. I'm saying this, I want you to think. I'm saying that there are things you learn that you're going to have to unlearn. There are things that you've been taught that you're going to have to unteach yourself. And it's the unlearning and the unteaching, that's the job. That's the work. Back years ago, hundreds, thousands of years ago, it was called the great work. The great work was not for you to kneel on your knees and say, oh God, take all this sin away from me and save me and I'm fixed. No, the great work was for you to become you. And you and I are on this floor, this classroom of the great work to really be who you've been designed to be. Right. So it was training all of your sensual apparatus, training your sensual being, which you think is you. But that's not you. That's the gift for you. Selah. It's not really you. It's the gift for you. The real you is the divine you, is the you that is eternal, never dies. That's you. Now the gift you's temporary. It's the sensual you that God gave you at the moment, at the time of your birthing when He pushed you out. He said, now here is the physical temple of your body, and I'm coming into it as the breath to life it, and I'm going to live there. I'm going to live there. As long as you let me live there, you can extinguish me from here at any time. Some people do it 10, some do it 20, some do it 30, some don't do it till 100, or some ain't done it at 120 or older. But you can do it at any time. You can extinguish that, and you can let the Spirit exit anytime you want to. But I tell you, that Spirit is there now to take control and to take charge and to train this physical apparatus to be what God has designed it to be. Not what the physical has made it to be. It makes it to be what you think it is through the sensual apparatus of addictions, behaviors, habits. That's good preaching now, bless God.
Yes, amen. Yes.
Like you think, bring it home.
Yes.
Bringing it home.
Does.
Looking in the mirror. This part of you makes up the greater part of what you call the natural world, or your natural self. Many people call it the natural mind, or even the carnal mind. Those are attachments, they're tags. It's really the mind. Because in the mind, there are all kinds of fish. All manners of fish. Some unclean, some clean. All of that's in the river of mind. The natural mind. You call it the natural mind or the carnal mind. Many times attached to what we call the ego. And I've been trying to say there's not anything wrong with your ego as long as you're in control of it. But when it's in control of you, I tell you, it is a horrible master. It will beat you up. It will keep you in bondage. It will keep you ignorant from the divine truths. It'll let you do this and let you do all kinds of stupid things. I mean, used to back in my younger days, I could dance better than anybody in here after I had a quart of Jack Daniels in me. Prior to that, wasn't too good. I was all left-footed. But I think I could beat Francisco dancing back then. This part of you makes up the greater part of what we call the natural mind or the carnal mind, and many times it's attached to it what we call an ego. This part of our being runs at least 96% of our life. The programs this teacher has, is in your sensual being, or it's in your mind. It has taught us, what it has taught us are not necessarily the best ways to react or to respond. What the sensual apparatus has taught you is not necessarily the best way to act. You can act a little different way. This is called, in teaching, exotericism, the outward, looking at the outward. The only difference is they took the exoteric and they dressed it in religion. Most think they need to pit the exoteric, that outward, they need to pit it against the esoteric or the inward. Actually, our job as physical / spiritual, natural / divine beings, our job as that is to integrate, to combine, to make the two one.
Yes.
Genesis chapter 2 closes these phrases. Genesis 2 closes with this phrase: what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Had nothing to do with marriage of a man and a woman. It had to do with the combining of the androgynous, positive and negative. The contrast that God put in you to say what God has joined, don't try to separate it. Don't try to tear it apart. Don't try to divorce yourself from it. You are in that paradox for purpose. And that purpose is your growth. You are to combine the two. Not throw out one. No. That's what Christianity wanted to do. They wanted you to kill yourself. Ain't that what he told you?
Yeah.
You got to decrease, bless God. He's got to increase. You got to die. Kill your flesh. Beat it down. That's stupid. Why don't you learn to enjoy it and let it submit to you? Why don't you learn to master it and let it serve you? When it serves you, folks, food could not be any greater under that kind of a leadership. And it's not that food is wrong or food is right. It's what you start to do with it when you're in control. There's nothing wrong with sex. There's nothing wrong with relationship. There's nothing wrong with the things God created. It's all beautiful. It's all the divine purpose, divine essence. It's when you and I begin to rise up as who we are called to be, the Christ. We are the Christ. Don't sing to a Christ that was, or don't sing to a Christ that will be. Sing to the Christ that is you, the one that is you, the one that is powerful, the one that can give you all of the beauty of this creation and help you and me to live healthy, to live long, to live in bliss, to live in happiness, to live in abundance. There's nothing wrong with you at any time time saying, this ain't working real good for me. There's got to be some adjustments. There's got to be some changes. If you don't do it for you, it won't get done.
Yeah.
I'm not mad. I just kind of act a little like it sometimes. You know what I'm talking about? I'm not really mad. Oh my. Gosh. I'm running out of time.
You better get past introduction.
I have got to. This is wrong. I swear it's wrong. I want to read you this real quickly. Let me see if I can jump forward real quickly here. I got to get. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Just to comprehend the esoteric meaning of ancient Brahminical literature, one has to be in possession of the key to the Brahminical code, which the Brahma and the Brahminical code actually comes from the code of the Hebrew glyphs, because it's one. It's one. Mark did that on his chart right here. This, I think is it this one? I think it is. I think this is the one where he integrates the glyphs, the Kabbalah, the Daizan from Chinese. This is basically what I'm talking about, this combination. And if you'll look at what Mark did with this, and now he and I don't collaborate on any of these things. Really, we don't talk a lot. He'll call me every now and then, and he's driving that trash truck, and he heard something on one of them CDs, and he called me and said, "What? You mean that?" Yeah. But if you look at this, if you look at Mark's integrating here, you have these 4 quarters. That's what I'm driving at, these 4 quarters. You are these 4 quarters, okay? I'm putting these right here on the board.
Yeah.
That's what I want you to see. Beautiful. So when you're thinking about that now, put that in sideways and listen. To comprehend the esoteric meaning of ancient Brahminical literature, one has to be in possession of the key. And what I try to do, and I hammer at it sometimes, maybe I belabor it. I'm trying to give you keys to you. I'm trying to give you divine principles, that you can take these divine principles and put them to work in your life, and you will become a greater you.
Yeah.
You will become a more fulfilled you. You will become a purposeful you. You will become a healthy you. You will become the you of the divine. The one that's in charge of this beautiful house. There is no ugly house God built. God don't build ugly houses. Every temple, every house God built is beautiful.
Yeah.
You can look at anybody and say, wow, he or she is beautiful. Why? Because they are the temple. They are the temple of God.
Yeah. To
To master the conventional terms used in the Puranas, or the Aryakas and the Upanishad, is a science in itself. And if any of you don't have Upanishad, you should buy that and read. There's 2 volumes to it. But you should buy them and read them. I've had them for years. I don't tell a lot of people I read some of this literature because, you know, they cut you down anyway. They think, oh, God, he's into all that. I'm into any kind of truth.
Yes.
Truth. I'm into truth. The Upanishad is a science in itself, and one far more difficult than even the study of the 3,996 aphoristical rules of the Panina, or his algebraical symbols. Kind of sounds like reading Alvin Boyd Kuhn, don't it? The teachings of the secret doctrine, supplemented by universal traditions, must now have demonstrated that the Brahmanas and the Puranas, the Gathas, and other Mazdean scriptures, down to the Egyptian, the Greek, the Roman, and then finally through the Jewish. I don't like that they said Jewish. I would have said the Hebrew.
Yes.
Hebrew sacred records, all have the same origin. But now what I'm reading was written several hundred years ago. Okay, this is not relative new writing. This is several hundred years old. These sacred writings. None of the meaningless and baseless stories, none are meaningless. Listen, none of these stories, none are meaningless and baseless stories invented to entrap the unwary profane. All are allegories intended to convey, under a more or less fantastic veil, the great truths gathered in the same field of prehistoric traditions. Did you hear that? They're all allegorical. All of the stories. So it doesn't matter which one of these schools of thought that he mentioned that you're going back to, whether they be ancient Hebrew or whether they be Brahmin. It doesn't matter. All of the stories are allegorical, symbolic, saying the same thing. Why? They're all about you. They're every one of them. It has been shown on the evidence of the whole ancient literary world, and the intuitional speculations of more than one philosopher and scientist of the later ages that the tenets of our esoteric doctrine are corroborated by inferential as well as by direct proof in almost every case. However, further back in time than any of the scriptures have come down to our day, there exists a literary relic. According to H.P. Blavatsky, she first mentions it in the opening page in her initial work, The Isis Unveiled. This exists somewhere in the wide world of old books. So very old that our modern antiquarians might ponder over its pages an indefinite time and still not quite agree as to the nature of the fabric upon which it is written. It is the only original copy now in existence. The most ancient Hebrew doctrine on occult learning. It's the Sefer Dinzonata. It was compiled from it, that at the time when the former was already considered in the light of a literary relic. This very old book is the original work from which the many volumes of Kaitai were compiled, not only the Sefer Dinzonata, but even the Sefer Yetzirah, the work attributed by the Hebrew Kabbalists to the patriarch Abraham. Which I'm going to read from right now. That's it. Sefer Yetzirah. This is actually a book that's actually made up of about 1,600 words. If you actually put it on a page or on a book, it would actually cover a page and a half. One of the most profound writings that's ever existed. A page and a half. 1,600 words. Now this particular compilation of it has 398 pages. Took them 398 pages in our supposedly modern day time, the last 100, 150 years, to say what he said on a page and a half. Now, do you reckon that page and a half has got a lot on it?
Yeah.
That page and a half has got a lot on it. But I'm going to show you that this page and a half, see if I can find out what page that I wanted to look at in this book. I'm going to show you the essence of that 1,600 words or a page and a half. I want to show you the essence of it in a figure. This figure.
Mm-hmm.
You see this figure?
Yeah.
You see that figure right there? You can't see it? That figure right there is this. That figure right there is also this. This figure right here is called the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. It's called the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. It's made up of what's known of as the 10 Sephirots. The 10 Sephirots is where Masonry builds their 32 steps. It's where the Rosicrucian builds its ancient wisdom. It's the wisdom that was built by Hermes in ancient Egypt. Right here. It's all about you and the understanding of you. And how I would do this, I would liken it just like they have here. They have 1, 2, 3, and all I would do is I would change it. My stick man, like this, I would do this. Now in Hebrew, what I would call that is in, which you know what, a way that you can say in, A-I-N. Another way you can say that in English is space. No place space isn't. Space is everywhere. Space goes everywhere. And actually, space is not time, but space can be in time. Put that in your pipe, smoke. Space is eternal,
Right,
everlasting, non-ending.
right. Space is in time and out.
But do you know what? Space can be in a small dimension, just like the box of this room. Just like the distance between you and me. But there's a tremendous amount of things. So this first little circle that I use here is space. In. Then, the next one that I would use, I would call this one in soft. Because it's out of space comes life. L-I-F-E. In soft. And out of the in soft comes the in soft in Hebrew. Or means light. So what you have is you have light, life, and love. Those are the three divine essence that we would know of as power. That's what you are. Bottom line, you are light, you are life, and you are love. And it's out of this builds this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's the 10 Sephirotic tree of life. Put together in a stick man to show you how that it represents you. And it has, in this picture right here, it has something in it that most people don't know about. And it's not in, if you look at it in, if you look at this in masonry, or if you look at it in other Rosicrucian material, or any other ancient symbolic material, that one right there is not in it. Because if you put that one in it, that's 11. You leave that one out, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then you have 22 Hebrew glyphs. 10 and 22 is what? So you see, if masonry, if you go York Rite, if you're going to the crown and glory of York Rite, you go up this side. And there are 22 connections from here to here. If you go up the other way, Scottish Rite, there's 22 connections up this way to here. Doesn't matter which way you go. It doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't matter if you go York Rite. I think my daddy was a York Rite. He was a York Rite Mason, and my stepfather was a Scottish Rite Mason. Yeah. Yeah. Poppy was a Scottish Rite, and Daddy was a York Rite. Get to the same place. But this one's not there. And the reason this is not there, this is the one I'm going to close with. It's the one that I want you to grasp and to get you to understand. Because this one deals with, this one is right here. I'm going to put it right here. And that's what it's called. Deot. What is Deot? Deot is a door that exists. And that door is just right here. And that door is there so that I can go through it, or what's out here in space can come through it into me. It's called Deot. It's a door to the divine. The door is not exoteric. It's not out there. The door is here.
It's a symbol for infinity, what you just described. And the vortice at the middle, the Vesica Pisces, is where all energy is created.
I think science is calling this the black hole, is what I'm beginning to think. Because I'm not so sure. I'm not up to the speed on the science of the black hole. I'm not. I am up to speed on the Deot. And I am up to understanding from the Kabbalah and from ancient Hebrew. I am up to the understanding that the Deot is the place that I get everything. Brian has a little saying that he says, and I like his little saying. He said, I heard it from the place of no words. Thank you.
Before words, that's right. Get all my information.
I love that.
It's before.
Because that's what I get. That's where I get so much of what, it's intuitive, folks. I promise you, I don't get this because I'm smart. I'm not smart. They kicked me out of high school in the 12th grade. I had not ever read a book, not even the first book, when I was in school. I never took a book home. I didn't want to. I didn't like school. I thought school was a waste of time. I wanted to do other things. And I did other things. I wasn't dumb. I'm still not dumb, but I'm not the brightest bulb in the box. But I'm not dumb. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't finish high school. They wouldn't let me finish. They expelled me in my senior year. Now, I went 12 years. I never failed a grade. But the reason I didn't fail a grade in the summer, I went to summer school every year because I had a lot of fun at summer school. Me and my other friends, we got in trouble, smoked dope, we sniffed glue. I mean, I was really into snooglyffing. I wasn't affected by it at all. I've never been affected by sniffing the glue.
Wow.
They finally, back in the 60s, that was a popular means. Like today, I guess meth has become a popular thing. Meth wasn't popular in the 60s, thank God. I'm glad it wasn't. Heroin was popular. Sniffing glue was popular. They finally banned sniffing glue because it really will fry your brain. It really will. And I sniffed enough glue to fry my brain. I did. I would sit in class sometimes and sniff glue. I didn't read. And then I had this place in my life. I come to this place in my life. It's falling apart. I was a part of a motorcycle gang. I built choppers back in the mid-'60s. I built motorcycles and I run with a real hellion motorcycle gang. And we stole motorcycles, we stole cars, we done a lot of things. I did a lot of things that I can't go back and change. I did things. I did things what I was 26 years old and I thought I was going to prison. Wow. My time was very limited. I was going to prison. And so I was in a motel room and I knelt by the side of a bed. I said, God, I really need some help. I'm going to go to prison. And I hate to go in prison in my condition, and I hate for another man to raise my children. I hated those ideas, and I said, I need some help to change my life. That was basically how my life got. At that night, I knelt on that bed. The next day, I was so hungry to read the Bible, which I had never read in my life. I was so hungry to read the Bible that next day. I had to go buy a Bible. That has been nearly 50 years ago. And I haven't stopped reading that book since. Now, I don't encourage people to read it because it's so confusing. But I spent so much time. You know why? Because something come alive in me. It didn't come into me. I didn't ask it to come into me. It come alive in me.
Yes.
It's there.
It
It's always been there.
Yes.
Always. Hallelujah. And as we learn these beautiful truths, we learn these things that you learn. This window, this Deot that I'm telling you about in my closing right here, the window of your heart.
Yes.
That's why I told you yesterday, when you start the Hebrew Scripture, when you start the Torah with the Beth, and you close the Torah with the Lamed, you spell heart. The heart is what that's all about. It's the window, the door to the divine essence of what God is and what God has for you. So,
such thing as sin so bad that God would turn away so mad. When your deed is not your best, it doesn't mean you failed the test. God's way is not to give a score. Just learn from what you've done before. Change your thought, disown the deed. To change your world, that's all you need. The less than perfect things you do are simply you experiencing you. So forgive yourself, forget the sin. Guilt and shame should never win. Move on in life, look back no more. On that behavior, close the door. Know that before any deed is done, He's forgiven everyone. Learn from it and then change your course. There's nothing gained from remorse. Fear not that there's a judgment due. God's love for you is forever true.
Amen.
And this one kind of goes with what we've been talking about. Well, that one too, but all weekend. It's called God Within. God is within. God is among us, and you and me. You have to just look. You can't help but see. He created us all from his essence of being. We share in his grace, but our eyes are not seeing. Open your mind. Listen to your heart. His pulse is inside you. Your life is his art. He whispers to you if you quietly listen. He wants to tell you that your life can glisten. Happiness and harmony are yours for the asking. Peace and love are behind all the masking. Step away from the noise and see God in all things. Take time to look inside and see what quiet brings. Yourself has the answers. It waits to be asked. No questions is too great. It's up to the task. Asking will bring you to a most wonderful place where you'll meet God's essence face to face. It's my friend Martha Schweitzer.
That's good.
Wow.
Share a little bit of the dream about the library.
All right, I don't have these kind of dreams, but probably a month ago, 2 nights in a row, I had the same dream. We were in this big library. I don't know for sure where it was at, but Mark's always wanted to go to Edinburgh, Scotland, so I'm assuming it might have been there. But we're in this library, and Mark is nowhere with me, and this lady is giving me this tour. And she's like, wait, I'm going to introduce you to somebody. And she goes and she knocks on the door, and he says, come in. And we go in, and I'm just like, in awe. I don't know who it was. I never saw his face. I felt his presence. I felt his essence. So I knew I was like, and so I'm standing there, and he's like, he introduces himself, and I'm just, like I said, in awe. And he says, well, I'll tell you what, I don't have a whole lot of time, but if you go, I'll give you 1 minute to go out and find a book. Bring it back and we'll discuss it. I said, okay. So I go out there, and I'm looking for my kind of books. I'm looking for the metaphysical, the new thought, just, all that kind of stuff. I couldn't find them. So I go back in there, and he's like, all these books and not one book? And I'm like, I don't waste my time on just picking up any book. It has to call to me. Because if I just pick up a book, just to pick up a book, I'm wasting my time and my energy. And he's like, I said, but my husband, on the other hand, I said, he can find a book in a heartbeat. And I said, and just about that time, Mark walked by the door, and the woman called him in and introduced Mark to him. And there again, we still didn't know who it was, but Mark went and found a book, and he brought it back, and that's where I woke up, and I had that dream 2 nights in a row.
Wow.
Is that all?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So y'all can see with a wife like that how I'm always challenged to live in a different dimension. I want to, and be sure and,
Oh, okay.
okay. If I was to bring any thought today, it would be the fact that I have been on a journey. A lot of people don't realize that I grew up with a family of bikers. So from the age of an early age to somewhere in the neighborhood of about 12, I couldn't imagine the fact that me being an only child at that time would wake up and literally be in places I had no idea how I got there. I'm talking about parties, I'm talking about, you name it, with bikers. I seen it. I was always left with college teenagers to babysit me, and they had parties. And then 11 years old, my stepdad, and you have to understand, my dad collected rare cars. He would drive a different car every week. He actually was a scout for a rich guy who went out and did muscle cars. He had old Mustangs, he had old Camaros, and that was my dad's dream, is to drive a different kind of car and own them all. And he would detail them. And my stepdad, he was a mechanic that majored in Ford racing. I remember growing up and them putting a $5 bill and said, grab it, and they floored it. And so I had a pretty interesting life till 12 years old when my brother was born, and my parents became these people who didn't even wonder where I was, became religious. I got curfews, I got this, I got that. Who is these people? Where have you, how, and And my brothers and sisters were all raised completely different. And so when my mom passed, my stepdad he said, well, I got to go out and live life. I got to do what I got, do what I got to do. Well, he got back into racing. He got back into building cars. And my brother and sister are like, who is this? And I was always thinking about, my dad he moved furniture for a big trucker. He was a trucker. I drive a trash truck. And he used to tell me, he said, Mark, he said, it's all about function. Just get the thing, get it loaded, and let's go. Hebrew thought. But for years I did Greek, and I always thought, who did I get these ideas of separating words? Because I hated to read. I hated word studies. I used to make fun of people who did the history of words. But after I got baptized in the Holy Spirit, I'd see a word and split it. I did it the other day. We went through McDonald's here. And there's a woman with the name Ebony, but they had a Y instead of an E. And I said, look, her name's E-Bone. E instead of a Y. E-Bone. I said, your name's E-Bone. So after being the baptism of the Holy Spirit, I started thinking in Greek. And I always said, who did I get this from? And now I'm being around my stepdad because we were estranged for a number of years because of what went on between me and my mother. And I thought, you're the one. Because he has the same mechanical mind to split things and take them apart and put this together. And, well, no, a 67 and a 78, you can put the same engine in them. And he thinks that way. I thought, you're the reason I'm this way. So, but one of the things that I want to conclude the best that I can is if you look at this chart right here, he mentions the Brahmi. The Brahmi's right here. And I have been fascinated for years with the whole Hebrew idea of the relationship of it and Sanskrit. It has been something that has constantly drives me. Because a lot of people have talked about the relationship of Hebrew and Egyptian in these meetings. You don't talk about it outside of this. But with Lynn Hayes and Dr. Craig Lyons, I would get on the internet and put Hebrew-Egyptian connection, and all I would find is stuff you already told me. And one day I looked up Hebrew-Sanskrit connection, and I realized there is a whole load of stuff out there that if you start getting into the resources, the people who wrote the stuff are either dead or on the run. And so I became very fascinated years ago to Sanskrit. I feel that language is drawing me, those glyphs. And I believe Hebrew and Brahmin are one, as illustrated on this chart as well, where I have Hebrew, Sanskrit roots to Greek. Many Greek words have Sanskrit roots. Whether you realize this or not, many of your words in the New Testament came from Sanskrit. For instance, if I say, my yoke is easy, yeah, that's pull the end on. Well,
That's an eraser on it.
No.
oh, okay. Yeah. Boy.
There it is.
My wife can say that. Zogos, that's Greek for yoke. It comes from the Sanskrit word yoga. We have this word for bread in Greek, artos. Artos is from Sanskrit. Here's a real popular word, pistis. Pistis, this P-I-S, is from Sanskrit.
What was the last one, Mark?
Pistis, and the P-I-S, which is piss, with one S, is from Sanskrit. Now, the thing that amazed me is I started looking at these Sanskrit origins, and I started asking myself, I said, okay, why is there's so much information about this? And I tried my best to build a bridge from Greek to Sanskrit, but it was very difficult, and the reason I found out is that there was a bunch about Aramaic I didn't know. So both Fabre d'Olivet, the book I was talking about yesterday, and Aramaic, and so I got into this guy by the name of, and we'll get current on the charts here, Neil Donald's Klutz. And I look up the bibliography. I do that. When I look at books, I'll look at the bibliography. One of the first places I ever found the name, and I don't normally find him amongst Kabbalists, was Fabre d'Olivet, the book I talked about yesterday, was quoted by this Aramaic guy. In fact, I find that most Aramaic people are looking for pure Hebrew. They're not trying to replace the Hebrew. They're trying to find pure Hebrew. So I was walking in my library one day, and I found this guy. His name is Andrew Gabriel Roth. He's a Messianic Jew from New York. And he grew up with Hebrew. Then he decided, I'm going to learn Greek so I can really tell these people off. And his Greek is actually good. Most people who do this, his Greek is good. But then I found something that really surprised me. He found a copy of the Lomsa translation, and he left both of them to do Aramaic. And he said, I grew up with this. And the thing that was so beautiful about the Aramaic is that he is a lot of times talking about the fact that there's a lot of stuff that the Hebrew already says, but the Aramaic amplifies it. But it's a real interesting story about this guy. And I found Andrew Gabriel Roth. I found this guy, and that got me kind of looking at it, and he also talked about the fact that Lomsa in his day, although Lomsa was, to me, very radical, I will be truthful to say I don't believe Lomsa believed in anything historical or literal, but saying that in the 1950s and 60s would have got you in a lot of trouble. It'll get you in a lot of trouble now. So Lomsa there was a lot of things that Lomsa did in combining East and Western Aramaic that people don't even know. Well, then there was a guy by the name of James Trim, who's in Hebraic roots. This is actually my Aramaic mentor, got me into him, James John Francisco. And both of these guys hooked up with a guy by the name of Vendell Jones. Has anybody ever heard of Vendell Jones? Vendell Jones is the real Indiana Jones that was from Arlington. And he was a student of both Kabbalah and the Essenes. And he was the night in the movies, he was it went working for the Nazis or trying the government. In fact, he had a church, and they called him a Baptist preacher, and he sold the steeple off. He saw the steeple off? Yeah. See. So, very radical. I found a book of his, actually Kathy found a book of his called Will the Real Jesus Stand Up? And he was out to destroy the Hellenistic Greek view of Jesus that was in the world. My friend Craig Lyons actually had meetings with him and spent time with him. So that's the next on the chart. And I mentioned George Lomsa. And this guy is Neil Donald Klutz. So both of these charts go together. And by the way, I'm going to lay these charts up here so that if you want to get more into them, you feel free. So the inroad, as I began to look at these Aramaic words, now let's look at this word here. Do you know that the guy here, this guy here, Neil Donald Klutz, let me read to you what he says about Tahu Bahu. He says, Tahu Bahu, a worldly formlessness, spreading destruction like a mythical sea monster, and an earthly emptiness, devouring life and food, like a mythic land monster. Life as we know it at the moment of creation flows between existence and non-existence, like the state we experience between sleep and just awakening. Yet this seemingly chaos holds great power and possibility in its womb. It is the germ of the seed of life awaiting in its time to sprout, and even the dream of that germ waiting in the petal of a flower, and the winter wind blows it away. That's his translation of Tahu Bahu. Wow. This guy's name is Neil Donald Klutz, and it always will connect to the Hebrew glyphs of Faber de Olivet. This is my friend Carl Armstrong. I can't find the page, but you asked me after the meeting. I'll tell you, this book is about black holes, and this book is about the doorknob into quantum physics, which the door, if you go in here, there's an actual graphic of a door, and the dot, the Hebrew letter for number 4, is on the book.
Wow.
It's here for y'all to check out. And I'll have these books. I'm going to go ahead and have this book and take this book to Annie so y'all can look at that. This is his full thesis that is in print. He actually calls himself Mortimer J. Duck because he raises ducks. He had to use a pen name for a long time because he was a chemical engineer for over 44 years at a plant down in Texas. This book is a book called Arthur B. Ingalls' Genesis and the Rise of Man. That'll preach right there. And as you look into this, he talks about the Egyptian roots and the Sanskrit roots of the word Ra. And one of the things is he quotes a guy named Bud Mosier. Bud Mosier was a unity pastor that was there in Dallas. And one of the things that impressed me is he said the word Ra comes back from the Sanskrit root that doesn't mean evil, but it means life-giving. And you said that yesterday with lover, friend. Look at this one. This is Neil Donald Clutt's Aramaic Prayers of the Cosmos. Now this guy here calls himself a Sufi. Listen to this verse. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Listen to this. Integrated are those who joyfully knit themselves together with him. They shall be stamped with the seal of cosmic identity.
Wow.
Neil Donald Clutz. And I've been reading these Aramaic books, and then I got into this guy. This guy name is Jeff A. Benner. He's a Paleo-Hebrew. And when this book was first written, they asked him a question. They said, how did you know Hebrew was to be pictorial and not literal? And he said, E. Raymond Catt, which is this book right here. I don't understand fully everything E. Raymond Catt said, but his linguistics is an archaeologist, and he shows the listings from Egyptian to Hebrew. It is absolutely fascinating. This guy is a British Identity Israel guy, whatever that means in our day and time, but he's got some good archaeology.
What's his name again?
E. Raymond Catt. So last night I was sitting there and I was meditating. Benji was playing. How many of you know you can't get something while Benji playing something wrong? And the boys, all of y'all playing. And I was sitting here and I started getting this download. Ancient Hebrew. I like what Lynn said about Kabbalists because, you know, Kabbalists are like hillbillies. There's every flavor. If you ever travel through Arkansas, you'll know what I just meant. This is the idea and the concept, but in between this is the real where truth is, which is paradox. And this is what Lynn said earlier. And last night, I was playing with this idea of abstract, and then you have what's in the other half of this, which is concrete. Now, here is one of the biggest problems that people don't know when they study the Bible, and that's that the Hebrew and the Greek have two different views of spirit and matter. And we always are telling people, oh, there's got to be a marriage of the spirit and the soul. Well, if you get in linguistics, you're going to be really confused. Because there's years and years and years of religious junk that has told us that some say you're a spirit, some say you're a soul, some say you're this. They think with the Greek mind, the Hebrew mind. And I started trying to get caught up into this Hebrew idea. And the Hebrew idea is always this. God created it, said it was good, and then he wants to flow through it. But there's a part of Greek philosophy that wanted to say that the body was bad, and we have spent 1,100 years of nothing but bullshit trying to tell people that you've got to get rid of your body, you've got to get rid of your ego, you've got to get rid of your flesh, pardon my expression, but this is how passionate I am, is that we have grew up trying to get rid of everything and not realizing what we already have.
Amen. That's good. Right.
And we do not say these things because we have not seen them. We say these things because we have fervently looked at these and examined these and studied these, only to find out that we are now still dealing with the same concepts that says your body. I have met women who are traumatized at how beautiful they are. I have met men who are so self-conscious they can't even date. I was that way. I was, oh my gosh, I was a horrible person to date because I didn't want to sin when we dated. Well, what a ball of joy I was. when I started looking into these things, you know, Lynn mentioned the word shalom. Shalom means wholeness. And we have translated that as a peace. Well, that means we're not at war, or we're not at a place of war. No, the peace we're talking about existed before war ever began. And it's the word shalom, which means nothing missing, nothing broken. And the Greek word for peace, which is irene, does not just mean peace, it also means balance, which is the sign of Libra in the scales.
Amen.
And the Greek word harmatia, which was translated as a painful offense, we translate it as the word sin, and we don't realize there's another Greek word which is harmatano, which just means to miss the mark. And it's not talking about missing God, it's talking about missing who you are and who you are as character.
Good.
Oh, that's good.
So then we have this Aramaic word, which is the salaf, which is the word for prayer, and it means to tune to a frequency. And so all these years, I've been over here in this battle of spirit and flesh. And listen, if this was some sort of mental conceptual thing, that's fine. But we're in a real life where we have breakdown and breakthrough, and we see people who have been traumatized by all of these years of people teaching on the physical body. There is nowhere in the Greek and Hebrew. Nowhere. I have met women who are still, their greatest fear is to really show who they are. Because we, in the years that's come, when a woman stood out, she could only be three things. Well, if you're going to stand up and be who you are, you're going to be either categorized and judged as a prostitute, or New Age, or as a witch. And I'm sitting here in a world realizing we have done damage to ourselves by suppressing this feminine energy.
Amen.
And I used to think it had to do with me releasing women. But I realized years ago, I got to release myself.
There you go.
There's nothing I can do to come out there and release you if I haven't released myself.
Yeah, you got that.
And so I started studying these, and Kathy and I are working on these Hebrew glyphs, and I'm just going to tell you, on the chart there's one missing, and it's mine. And I was driving along, I tried to pull it up on my iPad, but I couldn't do it, and I came across this rock. And on this rock, the glyphs look half Hebrew and half Sanskrit. The guy that wrote them, they can't even find. And I told Kathy, I said, I'm going to spend my life studying these things. Because there's many, many good, absolutely positive things written about Hebrew and Egyptian. And I'm not taking from that. I want to build on that. But there is a whole lot about Hebrew and Sanskrit and Brahma that has yet to be explored. And yet it was being explored in the 1800s by a guy named Max Muller, who was a Sanskrit scholar, and a guy named T. Savarow, who worked with Blavatsky. Sanskrit was an absolute beautiful language because we have 5 words in Greek for love. And yes, one of them is eros, okay? That's the word we get the word erotic. In fact, I'm going to tell you, if you really translated the Greek New Testament, you couldn't sell it in a Christian bookstore. Because the Greek, they translate eros as to be sexual, but that's a misinterpretation. It's really sensual. And we don't know how to be sensual because we think everything about the physical body is nothing but evil. And see, we have grew up with so many paradigms and ideas that when you're sitting in this meeting, you don't even know how much you're being healed. Because you are having undone to you what has been done to you.
Yes, good, good.
Yes.
Like the word intimate. You know, we making that intimate is a sexual word, they made it, but really the most intimate thing you can do is just sharing yourself.
The Greek word for koinonia, which is translated as Christian fellowship, means intercourse. And I remember my aunt said, I can't believe they read that for Greek lexicon. I said, you really ain't going to like when my ministry starts. Because I wanted to know what the word really meant. And so I would go into these seminaries and I go into all these places and look for these words, and I couldn't believe how sexual the Bible was. I said, oh my gosh. And then I realized it's not sexual, it's androgynous. And it is. Just like this. I'm not abstract or concrete, I'm both.
Amen.
I'm not spirit and soul, I'm both.
Yeah.
And in the world of philosophy, I was one day having this conversation about some videos that was released with actually Stephen Jones. Stephen Jones has a degree in philosophy, and we started talking about these conversations about Hebrew and Greek view of matter. Because whether you realize it or not, half of the New Testament, we only have certain Greek manuscripts, and half of those that we're told we have, we really don't have. If you've studied the corruption of Scripture and all this. And so you're talking about a Hebrew thought transferred through Greek. And we were talking about Luke, and I would never believe that he brought up one day, and he started talking philosophy, and he said most of us live the philosophy that we have of our physical body, whether it be Hebrew or Greek. You meet people, and I'm not meaning this bad, but they don't see themselves, their physical body, as evil. That I met and grew up with a bunch of Pentecostals. In fact, my own dad struggled for 10 years of his marriage because of all the Pentecostal junk that was taught to him about sex. It's a miracle I'm alive. I asked my dad one time about the birds and bees. I got 10 years of stuff I didn't want to know. I said, oh my God. But my pastor was a great pastor. And he said, he did a marriage seminar, and he said one night all the kids can't be here, and he taught on Greek from Bob Yannon, who's a Greek scholar, and he taught on sex. I stole the tapes. I said, well, I didn't do drugs enough, but I'm still in this tape. I said, oh my God, that's in the Bible? And of course, later on, Yannon almost ended his marriage, and Rick Renner come along, which was my mentor. Rick Renner did Greek word studies in the 80s. And he was recently teaching the same Greek words he had taught in the 80s, and 5 guys came in the back. They were Asian, and they said, we want to know something. How did you know? He said, how do you know this? What, the 7 churches? How did you know those were cities, not churches, and they were built underground, and no one could find them but us, and you're quoting exactly what we're finding in the ground? He said, because I ain't looking for in the ground, I'm looking at the Greek. Now listen, I'm not telling you that people ain't going to come across and find stuff, because in one of the big things Gene Scott ever brought up, and by the way, I'm not going to say anymore unless some of y'all bought them posters for $9.95. No, just kidding. But he brought out the fact that most of what we know of as Greek was not found in archaeology. It's when they went into Homer and the mythology and figured out where it was. And when he followed mythology, he had the greatest archaeology that was ever found. So I'm here to submit to you that when we stop following religion, we're not going to find much. But when we start following what we're talking here, we're going to start finding archaeology, which will only validate what we already know.
Amen.
Yeah.
Which we don't need.
Yeah.
But they need, because they think we crazy. So when I started studying this stuff, that's why I said you are the Rosetta Stone. Well, now his staff has come, and they're telling him, explain yourself, explain yourself. He said, I ain't got time to explain myself. I'm looking at too much. And so they're going actually and finding resources to agree. And so when I talked to Annie about 2 years ago, I said, I want to find some stuff that kind of it isn't where Lynn got it, but it will be a good guide for people to come, like what I've taught this weekend, and at least get started. Because you ain't got time to slow down and explain everything. You got to keep going. Ancient Egypt, Sumerian, the whole kit and caboodle. So I was sitting with the whole ball of wax. So as we were talking, I said, that's what I want to do with these resources. And along with this, Mike Clegg beat me to it and wrote the Cosmological Cipher. And there's a lot of good stuff in this book, a lot of stuff that has to do with Hebrew and Greek thought. And actually, if you read Dr. Brad Scott, Jeff Benner, all your Hebrew guys will say, Hebrew's concrete, Greek's abstract. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but Einstein said you can never solve a problem with the same mind that created it. And we will never get anywhere while we keep staring at these things apart. Well, I'm just going to stare at the abstract till I get something. Well, you still going to have abstract. that when I talked to Mike about it, we reversed these, because to me, you're not going to end the concrete of your physical body and how beautifully you are designed. Hello, we're in a crossover. You're not a mistake. You're a grand design. We are not going to get to anything concrete until we really explore the abstract. And we're so scared to explore the abstract because people will say, well, what about this verse? And what about that verse? When in reality, the more we start living the idea of God, that you are who you are, the more the concrete will take care of itself, because you are the concrete.
Yes.
Amen.
That's why I hate people coming and saying, Mark, you got to get in the Word, get in the Word. Last night I was meditating. Benji was playing awesome music and his sons, and I heard this phrase, my words. Now, because there has been so much garbage written about Logos, sometimes I use the word Memra, Aramaic, for awakening presence. The awakening presence of the voice. That's Memra. That's the Aramaic equivalent of Logos. The awakening presence of the voice said, my words are spirit, abstract, and they are life, concrete. And man, I started going through all the verses on spirit and soul. And then I saw this verse. It says, for the spirit is what? Willing. Isaiah said, if you be willing and obedient. We've had a generation trying to be obedient that was never willing. I used to go and say, God, I'll do anything, but don't make me like them people. Well, guess what? Well, they're all ostracized for what they believe. Well, that's the problem. Because people have an issue with what they believe rather than what they know. And this is my crowning gem here. And then we'll take questions and answers. And Benji will have his stuff packed before I have all my books packed. But this is Hebrew and Greek. Here is the Aramaic that is a bridge. Not anything else. And when you arrive at these two, because I'm talking about Hebrew as in what most people perceive, you come to ancient Hebrew. And when you do that, these, which is a dichotomy, which is duality, which is splitting us, will become that right there. We're not trying to get rid of the ego. Listen, I have spent years trying to get rid of sin. Crucify myself.
Yes.
I wore my hammer and bucket out and still had bad thoughts. I tried to get rid of the ego. I read all these books. Ego, ego, ego. I said, I'm going to find the ego and kill it. There ain't no ego to do but me. Plus in the Greek, when Jesus said I am, it is the Greek word ego. I said, well, nobody read the New Testament? What's going on with these people? Then I got ghosts. And you know there are ghosts in the New Testament. When they said, oh my gosh, Jesus is walking on the water. It didn't say pneuma, it said phantasm. There's a phantasm. I said, there's a Greek word for ghost. That proves Greeks had phobias like we did, and half of it got written in our New Testament. But then I said, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to release spirits. And then whenever somebody come with an alien thing, I said, I'm out. And now I find there are Greek and Hebrew scholars that are linguistic. They speak 7 languages that go to UFO Bible conferences. Now, I didn't know that because I wrote a book on Nephilim, and I've been introduced to a whole new world. I didn't exist because there's no Nephilim at the, well, there is. It's half the leadership, because the real definition of leadership is those who use their power to suppress people who are ignorant. See, the whole system, the beast system, knows you don't know who you are or what time it is, and so they suppress you. I don't care what you physically or formally trying to give the Nephilim. That's the essence of it. Is there were people back then that knew how powerful you were, but at the same time knew you didn't know it, so they kept you ignorant.
Yes, yes.
Well, listen, I don't know about no aliens, but I found that at the Baptist church every time I asked the question. So, just like the Antichrist, I spent hours on end looking for some future guy, and that was the Pentecostal preacher down there that told me that I wasn't even going to enjoy heaven till I got in there and got all cleaned up, and then I might meet the Christ. Well, that's Antichrist, because anti-Greek means instead of. So if you're looking for a Nephilim, it might be the beast systems in your mind that keep telling you that you're ignorant and unworthy, and that is based in religion.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, whatever your other theory you have, whether there's giants, I believe in giants. I believe you could find a whole slew of them. But I'm not going to base my Greek and Hebrew on physical evidence found in the ground, because I'm going to be honest with you, I think half of what was talked about in the Bible, quantum physics, was holograms, which leads me to my final point. When you really understand the Hebrew and Greek view, you realize that the mind and the body are nothing but holograms. Your brain is a hologram of your mind, and your physical body is the holograph of the zodiac. Selah. Question and answer? And I hope you got some, because I'll be honest with you, nobody ever let me ask, and I'm making room for this. We can talk later. I got plenty of stuff to look at. Y'all can look at books. We'll take them to Annie's, or just take the table. But the reason I say that is, all growing up, I could never ask questions, because they said if you ask questions, it's a break of faith. I submit to you, if you ain't got questions, you ain't got faith. They said, no, you got to have works. Listen, I wasn't even at the work stage, because I don't even know what a Christian's supposed to even look like in our day and time. All I know is the more questions I asked, the more I had faith, because it wasn't in the fact that this book was some grand mistake that was flown together. This has been absolutely, positively designed, and if you can ever get far enough into the linguistics of it, you will realize this thing can beat anything in quantum physics. I don't care what they come up with, they're not going to match what's in here. Except for one thing, and that's the you that it reveals.
That is the greatest physics book that ever was written.
But there's something greater than any quantum physics dimension, and that is the dimension of you.
Yes.
And if you look at you close enough, you find you're coded with the same codes. You're found that you're same. And I know I'm just repeating what's been said this weekend, but the beautiful thing about it is men and women have spent their whole lives in quantum physics trying to prove string theory, trying to prove this, and I'm looking at myself going, wow, I want to learn Chinese, I want to learn Japanese, Chinese, and Sanskrit, and I want to be able to pull these Hebrew glyphs out of every language of the world. Because I have news for you, they're in every language. Now, I can't prove all that, and I ain't got enough rocks to dig up to prove it, but I can tell you intuitively, we're on the brink of the greatest discovery in linguistics. I'm going to say one more thing, and I'll pause. I was at my job. Yes, Kevin?
I was going to make a comment.
Okay.
If you are the Rosetta Stone, if every language that you want to learn is already within inside you, you just have to release it.
See, she's better at translating than me.
We couldn't hear her, I couldn't. What did she say?
I
Okay.
said, if you are the Rosetta Stone, then every language you want to learn, everything you want to learn, in languages, he said you want to learn Chinese or Japanese, it's already within you. You just have to release it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the beauty of this cipher is that now when I go into any circumstance or situation, I see the glyphs, even in their language. And that's happened in the last few months. But the greatest thing that could ever happen in any of these situations is that you get turned on to the fact that you're going to dig in this and search in it. And what was, you can start where me and Lynn are now at. You don't have to undo all of this stuff. You can start now. And that's the beauty of this next generation, is that they are going to be able to step right into this. And it's not just writing a new translation. Listen, there are people right now that are on the brink of the greatest discovery of their life, only to realize it's always been.
Sacred knowledge.
And I would rather watch the History Channel than go to Sunday school.
Oh, yeah.
I may get a distorted view,
Yeah.
but I get a whole lot more distorted view there. But in all of these things, and I went over my time, I apologize. One thing that I want to emphasize in leaving this weekend is, as great as the conference is, there is nothing like the discussions, because that's when you meet
Yeah.
you. I was so blessed. I have emailed Alan Newton for 3 years. Never met him physically. I got to meet Brian and some of you, and what was so beautiful is I got to livingly, tangibly experience the body of God.
Yes.
I haven't seen Annie and Lynn. I've called them, but for almost 2 years. And I'm talking to Lynn, and we're almost firing on the same cylinders. And I thought, this is mind-blowing. But listen, we're at a crossover. And
Yes.
when we crossed over, we will no longer be in these dimensions trying to get rid of. We're going to start discovering that we are the whole ball of wax.
Yes, we are.
And that is Arkansas hillbilly term for it's about to get gooder and gooder and gooder and gooder. And I don't have to sit in another sonship meeting talking about what's fixing to happen that never happens. And before the meeting, we're all depressed because we're all going home because no one believes what we believe. This is intuitive. We know, even in this room, that there's more that is breaking through than has ever happened in your breakdown.
Amen.